Hello, students. I welcome you to the fifth and last lecture on the great epic poem, the Iliad, Book 3, a dual and a Trojan view of the Greeks. In the last lecture, we had seen how the oaths were taken by both parties, the Greek side as well as the Trojan side, and all the terms and conditions for the duel were laid out and agreed on by both parties. Now, in this section, we are going to actually discuss as to how the duel goes on between Paris and Menelaus and who emerges as the ultimate winner. I will be starting from line number 330 onwards. In order for the duel to happen in the no man's land, both the troops of the Greek side as well as the Trojan side, they sit down in a very orderly fashion and leave the space in between the two armies for the duel to happen between Paris and Menelaus. We already know that they had drawn lots. Lot is tossing of coins from both sides in a helmet, and Paris's lot had leaped out. It meant that Paris had won the lot, and he was the person who had or was given the chance to attack first. So let's begin. We see how Paris gets ready for the duel. Then godlike Paris, husband of lovely haired Helen, put on his magnificent armor. First, he placed his fine leg guards on his shins, fitted with silver ankle clips. Then he put on body armor. It belonged to his brother Lycan and fitted him too. Over his shoulder, he slung a bronze silver riveted sword and then a great heavy shield. Please note, these are the weapons that Paris decides to use. And there are other armors also. He is using a sword as well as a heavy shield. Now, on his mighty head, he placed a well made helmet from horsehair crest, the plume nodding frighteningly from the top. Then he took up a powerful spear that fitted his grip. So his helmet had the design of a mohawk. Okay, a mohawk is where there's a bunch of hair placed in the middle of the helmet for decorative purposes. That's called a mohawk. So he uses a beautiful helmet on his head, and that mohawk was made out of horsehair. He takes up a spear. So he has a silver riveted sword, he has a heavy shield, and now he has a spear in his hand. Coming to Menelaus, he being described as warlike, another attribute or characteristic trait of him. Warlike Menelaus also armed in the same way. He also has his protective gear on or his armor on and other weapons that he would like to use. And when they both had got themselves ready, each behind his front line, they strode out between the two forces looking daggers. Looking daggers means they were giving each other angry stares. The Trojans and the Greeks watched spellbound. Everybody was captivated by the action that was happening in front of them. The two men took up their positions not far from each other within the measured piece of ground. This is the no man's land that I was talking about, and brandish their weapons in mutual fury. Brandished refers to they started showing each other their weapons that they were going to use for the duel that was going to happen. First, Paris hurled his long shadowed spear since he had won the lot or the toss. So he is, able to hurl it, throw it, and it hit Menelaus's round shield. So Paris is the first one to attack. He throws the spear, and it hits the shield of Menelaus, but it did not break through, and the tip was bent back by the stout shield. Then Menelaus attacked with his spear with a prayer to Father Zeus. So Menelaus also wants to win the duel, and he prays in to Zeus so that he can win. And this is what the prayer goes like. Grant me revenge, Lord Zeus, on godlike Paris, the man who wronged me in the beginning. Use my hand to bring him down so that our children's children will still shudder at the thought of wronging a host who has offered them friendship. So Menelaus was definitely not wrong. Rather, he was the person who had been wronged. It was Paris who had come to his home and had abducted his wife. He was only behaving like a good host, and it was Paris who had wronged the host. So Menelaus over here expected Father Zeus to listen to his prayers, but we know that Zeus at this particular point of time has to side with the Trojans and not the Greeks, because Thetis had requested Zeus to make the Greeks start losing the war so that Achilles, who had been insulted by Agamemnon, the Greeks realized their mistake and tried to bring Achilles back into their army so that their troops become stronger. So Menelaus does not know that Zeus does not favors the Greeks at this point of time. That is the reason why he sends out a prayer to him so that he can exact his revenge from Paris. He spoke and balanced his long shadowed spear and hurled it. It hit Paris's round shield. The heavy weapon pierced the glittering shield, forced its way through the ornate body armor, and ripped right on through the side of Paris's tunic. So Menelaus is a very great warrior, and as soon as he attacks Paris, he is able to not only rip apart or go through the heavy shield of Paris, but it also pierces the armor, the body armor that Paris was wearing, and he gets hit on one side. Paris had swerved and so avoided dark death. So Menelaus is able to do some harm to Paris, but since Paris had swerved, meaning he had moved to one particular side, that is the reason he does not die. He was able to avoid death. Menelaus then drew his silver riveted sword, swung it back, and brought it down full on the ridge of his enemy's helmet. He attacks him on the head, but the sword shattered on the helmet and fell in pieces from his hand. The helmet of Paris was so strong that the sword of Menelaus breaks into pieces. Menelaus gave a groan and looked up to the broad sky. He looked up to the gods and he says, Father Zeus, there is no god more spiteful than you. I thought I had paid Paris back for his wickedness, and now my sword breaks in my hands when I have already thrown my spear for nothing and never touched the man. So Menelaus is not very happy with the outcome of the events, since he is seeing that he is constantly attacking Paris, but Paris is not getting hurt. He spoke, and hurling himself at Paris, seized him by the horsehair crest, and turning him around, began to drag him back into the Greek lines. Now, this is important. Since Menelaus had used all his weapons, he had thrown his spear, he had used his sword, but the sword had broken into pieces. What he does is that he grabs Paris by his helmet, that beautiful helmet, and he starts dragging him towards his side or into the Greek lines of forces. Now, what happens is because of the strap of the helmet, Paris starts getting choked. Paris was choked by the pressure on his tender throat of the embroidered helmet strap, which he had tied tightly under his chin, and Menelaus would have hauled him off and won utterable glory, but for the quickness of Aphrodite, daughter of Zeus, who saw what was happening and broke the strap made of leather from a slaughtered ox. So, this is where we see an interference of the goddess Aphrodite, who tries to rescue Paris. Aphrodite had seen that Paris was very soon going to get choked and he would have died. So, in order to save him, what she does is that she breaks off the strap of the helmet. So, the helmet came away empty in Menelaus's clenched fist. The warrior swung it round and tossed it into the Greek lines, where it was picked up by his royal troops. and launched himself at Paris again in the hope of killing him with his bronze spear. But Aphrodite hid Paris in a dense mist and whisked him away, an easy feat for an immortal, and put him down in his perfumed, fragrant bedroom, and then she went herself to summon Helen. So, what Aphrodite does is that she creates a cloud of mist or dust, okay? She makes Paris disappear using that cloud of mist, and she places him on his own bed in the room of Helen and Paris. Menelaus finds the helmet empty and he is unable to find Paris on the no man's land where the duel was happening because it was Aphrodite who had made him disappear. Now, what Aphrodite does is that he goes and she looks for Helen. She finds Helen on the high tower surrounded by Trojan women. The goddess, referring to Aphrodite, she puts out her hand and she tugs at her. She makes or draws the attention of Helen. And she tugged at her sweet smelling robe and spoke to her in the disguise of an old woman that she was very fond of. So Aphrodite does not, appear in front of Helen in her real appearance, and she takes the disguise of an old woman that Helen liked a little bit. Who was she? She was a wool worker who used to comb the wool for Helen, and when she lived in Lacedaemon. So, mimicking or imitating this woman, the celestial Aphrodite spoke to her. This is what she says: Come here, Paris wants you to go home to him. There he is in his bedroom, on the inlaid bed, decorated bed, dazzling in his looks and dress. You would never believe he had just come in from a duel. You would think he was going to a dance or had just stepped off the floor and sat down to rest. So she spoke, and her words went straight to Helen's heart. But when she noticed the superb neck, desirable breasts, and sparkling eyes of the goddess, she was shocked and spoke to her. So Helen is quick to recognize that the woman standing in front of her is not that old woman, but it was a goddess in the disguise of the old woman. And she speaks to her and says, Mysterious goddess, why are you trying to lead me on like this? Aphrodite had taken the disguise of the woman in order to invite Helen back to the bed of Paris. Helen does not appreciate this, and she says to her, I'm sorry, you are plotting, I suppose, to carry me off to some still more distant town in Phrygia or lovely Maeonia to gratify some or the other favorite of yours who may be living in those parts. Or is it Menelaus that has beaten Paris and wants to take me back home? Me, his loathsome wife. So now you have come here to try to lure me back to Paris. So um, Helen does not appreciate the fact that Aphrodite does whatever her will pleases. And it is because of Aphrodite's promise to Paris that she will give him the hand of the most beautiful woman on earth. Helen was abducted from Menelaus and given to Paris. So this is why she, tries to taunt Aphrodite and say that is it that she was going to take him to another distant land because Helen was now being promised to somebody else, or perhaps Menelaus has won the duel and now he wants to take her back. But Aphrodite does not want Helen to get separated from Paris. As a reason, she was luring him back to the room of Paris. She says to Aphrodite, no, go and sit with him yourself. Forget your goddess. Never set foot on Olympus again, but go and agonize over Paris. Go and pamper him, and one day he will make you his wife. She does not want to go to Paris right now. She says that one day he will make you his wife or his concubine. Concubine refers to those women who would be slaves of flesh. I refuse to go and share that man's bed again. It would be quite wrong. There is not a woman in Troy who would not blame me if I did. I have enough trouble to put up with already. It was because of Helen that the Greek forces were at the gates of Troy, ready to destroy the city. And if Helen at this point of time goes to Paris, goes to their bed, it would enrage the whole city of Troy, and that kind of wrath Helen did not want to invite it on herself. But when Helen says these words to Aphrodite that maybe she should go to Paris in order to act like his wife or his concubine, Aphrodite becomes very angry. So, enraged, meaning angry, celestial Aphrodite spoke to her. This is what she says: Obstinate wretch, don't get the wrong side of me, or I may desert you in my anger and detest you as vehemently as I have loved you up till now, and provoke Greeks and Trojans alike to such hatred of you that you would come to a dreadful end. This is a threat that Aphrodite makes in front of Helen, that she, using her powers, would make the whole Greek side and the Trojan side hate Helen. Both the sides at this point of time were fighting the Trojan War because both the parties wanted Helen on their side. Paris wanted Helen for himself, and Menelaus wanted Helen for himself. So, because of the love that they had for Helen, they were fighting with each other. Aphrodite threatens Helen that she would make both sides hate her. So she spoke, and Helen, child of Zeus, was terrified because she did not want to invite the wrath of these people on her. She wrapped herself in her shining white robe and went off in silence. Not one of the Trojan women saw her go. She had protecting divinity to guide her. So Aphrodite was able to hide Helen when she was going to Paris's room. When they reached Paris's superb house, the waiting women in attendance at once turned to their task. So nobody saw Helen going to Paris. Helen, goddess among women, went to her lofty bedroom. There, the goddess herself, laughter loving Aphrodite, picked up a chair, carried it across the room, and put it down for her in front of Paris. Helen, daughter of Zeus, who drives the storm cloud, sat down on it, but refused to look her husband in the face and attacked him. She's angry at him too. So you are back from the battlefield, and I was hoping you had fallen there to the mighty warrior who was once my husband. She feels guilty that she had left Menelaus, because as we already know, some say that she was abducted, some say that she had eloped. She taunts Paris and says, You used to boast you were a better man than born like Menelaus, a finer spearman, stronger in the arm. Go and challenge him to fight again then. But if you take my advice, you will think twice before you offer single combat to auburn haired Menelaus, or you may end up by falling to his spear. Helen knew that if the duel would have continued without Aphrodite interfering in it, it was definitely Menelaus who was going to win that particular duel between him and Paris. And this is the reason why she asked Paris to go and duel Menelaus again. Replied and said, My dear, don't say such hurtful things about me and my courage. Menelaus has just beaten me with Athene's help. Athene was the goddess of wisdom, craft, and war, and Paris does not want to accept his defeat. In fact, he makes allegations on Menelaus. It was Aphrodite who had helped Paris in order to get away from that battlefield or that no man's land where the duel was happening. But in front of Helen, he makes an allegation on Menelaus that Menelaus was winning because goddess Athene was helping him. He continues and says, But I too have gods to help me, and next time I shall win. Come, let us go to bed together and enjoy the pleasures of love. Never has such desire overwhelmed me, not even in the beginning, when I carried you off from lovely Lacedaemon in my seafaring ships, and spent the night making love to you on the Isle of Crane. Never till now have I felt such desire for you, or has such sweet longing overwhelmed me. So Paris is not bothered as to what is happening at the city gates, where both the armies were waiting for the duel to come to a conclusion. And he wants to spend or make love to Helen at this point of time, which is quite irresponsible of him. He spoke and made a move towards the elaborate bed, leading her to it. His wife followed him, and there the two lay down together. Meanwhile, Menelaus was prowling through the ranks like a wild beast, trying to find godlike Paris, but not a man among the Trojans and the famous allies could point him out to warlike Menelaus. So Menelaus was looking for Paris both in the Greek side as well as the Trojan side, but he was nowhere to be seen because it was the work of Aphrodite who had whisked him away or made him disappear from the duel into the bedroom of Helen. Not that if anyone had seen him, they would have hidden him out of friendship. Nobody liked Paris, not on the Greek side or on the Trojan side. Why on the Trojan side people hated him? Because it was because of his action, because of the consequences of his action of abducting Helen, that Greek army was at their doorstep ready for a battle. They loathed him, means they hated him, all of them like Black Death. And then Agamemnon, Lord of Men, spoke to them. Trojans, Greeks, and allies, listen to me. Menelaus has clearly won. Now give up Helen from Argos and all her property and make compensation on a scale that the future generations will remember. So, since Paris was nowhere to be found, the Greek sides declare that they had won the duel. So spoke the son of Atreus, and the Greeks all applauded. But what happens is that the Trojan side they refuse to accept defeat because they also could not find Paris, and the term of the duel was that the duel would be won by the person who ends up killing the other. And Paris at this point of time was not dead. So the Trojans say that, or they do not agree with the Greeks saying that Menelaus had won the duel because Paris was still not dead yet. They were unable to find him, but he was still very much alive. So the Trojans do not believe that Menelaus has won the duel, whereas the Greeks and Menelaus claim that he had won the duel. And this becomes the point of contradiction, which ultimately leads to the great war called as the Trojan War. Thank you. This brings us to the close of Book 3.